Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
Coors Beer, which is sold now in 26 states, used to be the third largest selling beer in America. Now it is sixth. Why? Because, as we said when we first broadcast this report last September, there have been stories circulating that the Coors Company is anti-black, anti-woman, anti-homosexual, and that's just for starters. There are also stories that Coors treats its employees shabbily, inhumanely. As a result, large blocks of people have organized boycotts against Coors Beer, and we'll get to that in a moment. First of all, for those of you who may be wondering just what is Coors Beer, take a look.
Hey, want a beer?
Coors Beer is what Burt Reynolds was smuggling across the country in Smokey and the Bandit. It's also what this fellow gained a particular fondness for in E.T. Paul Newman is one of its devotees. And because it was not available in the District of Columbia, Gerald Ford was said to have shipped it across the country on Air Force One. All that is part of what has come to be known as the Coors mystique. A mystique that made Coors one of the most popular drinks in America. Well then, just who is mad at Coors and why? This is what happens when someone asks the owner of this gay bar in San Francisco for a bottle of Coors.
I would not serve you a bottle of Coors.
Why not?
Since Coors has been a big advocate of supporting the moral majority and other anti-gay organizations, we do not carry their product.
And we got this from several of his customers.
And it's not only their discrimination against gays. They don't like blacks. They don't like Christians who are not Baptist. They don't like Catholics.
Gay bars aren't the only places Coors is off limits. Entire student bodies at several branches of the University of California have decided to stop drinking Coors. Women's groups, too, Hispanics. But most of all, organized labor is boycotting Coors. These union members chanting boycott Coors are among the thousands who have heard stories about Coors from their union leaders. Stories that the Coors Company cares nothing about its workers, that Coors subjects them routinely to violations of their human rights, invasions of their privacy. Stories that the Coors Company is a virtual fascist state.
They know more about you as an employee than any other human being in the world. Your mother doesn't know what Coors knows about you. Your father doesn't know. None of your family, your best friend doesn't know. That's a tremendous amount of power for somebody to hold over another human being.
And that is quite an accusation. What do the people at Coors think about all that? Here's what the chairman of the board, Bill Coors, thinks.
Their attack on us is immoral. It is unprincipled. It is a reflection on organized labor. It has to be. Because they're out to destroy us.
This is Golden, Colorado, home for 109 years of the Adolf Coors Company. Adolf Coors was a German immigrant who founded what is now one of the largest family-run businesses in the United States. About 10,000 people work at Coors today, and except for one small union, almost all of them are non-union. For in 1977, the workers voted out, by a margin of 2-1, the brewery's AFL-CIO local. And that was welcomed by these two men, Joe Coors on the left and Bill Coors. They are the brothers who run the Coors dynasty now. Both are conservative politically. Joe Coors has personally contributed to such as the John Birch Society and the Heritage Foundation. He's a member of Ronald Reagan's so-called kitchen cabinet. It is because of the Coors' political persuasion that some groups refuse to buy their beer, though Joe and Bill Coors insist it's their right to support whatever causes they see fit. But most of the anger aimed at Coors has more to do with how Joe and Bill Coors feel about unions. Bill Coors, you said unions are a result of poor management. From the idealistic standpoint, if management is properly concerned with the needs of the workers, not just material needs, but with health and spiritual and philosophical needs, I don't believe a union's needed.
I said it and I'm proud of it, Mike. That's exactly the way I feel.
Both Bill and Joe Coors assert that in the last 5 years, they have become the target of a campaign of lies. What lies are they telling, Joe Coors?
Well, they're telling a good number of them. They're telling that we discriminate against women. They're saying we discriminate against the Hispanics. They say we discriminate against the blacks.
They say that we abuse our people. They talk in terms of human rights that we don't honor, although they've never defined those human rights.
What are the specific charges being leveled at Coors? According to labor leaders, Coors has the power to administer lie detector tests on employees at will. Forced physical examinations. They say that Coors runs search and seizure raids routinely on employees' property. David Sickler worked for Coors several years back. Now he runs the AFL-CIO's organized boycott campaign against Coors. He told us what questions he was asked on a lie detector test when he was hired by Coors almost 20 years ago.
What kind of sex did you have with your wife or your lover last night? Have you ever had sex with more than one person at the same time? What kind of sex? Are you a homosexual?
And Sickler says there is more.
They would run wholesale raids. For example, if there was a rumor, just a rumor, that someone may have a marijuana cigarette, then they would run raids and searches on entire departments.
You mean on the person?
On their person, in their lockers, through their lunch pails. They would confiscate their cars and go through the car with a fine-tooth comb.
But Bill Coors still says those charges are not valid, and he has challenged organized labor to put up or shut up.
Bill Coors, you say I have a check on my desk for $10,000 made out to the bearer for anyone who can prove these claims about our firm are true. And if you come and investigate, we will open the company's files to you.
Our books are open to anybody, Mike. Anybody can come in here and they can determine for themselves exactly what we do. They can determine how we make our product, what our hiring practices are. I know of no company other than ours that has completely open books to anybody.
Coors opened its books to us, and we began to examine all of the charges against Coors, one by one. And what we found was that while Coors was accused several years back of racial discrimination, a charge that was settled out of court, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, now considers Coors one of the leading affirmative action employers in Colorado. 13% of Coors employees are minority members, black, Hispanic, Indian. Gay journalists have visited the Coors plant and have decided there is no foundation for continuing a boycott of Coors on the issue of homosexuality. As for minority organizations, some have dropped their boycotts and are now citing Coors as a leader in minority hiring. One group called LULAC, a Latin American organization, even plans to hold a testimonial dinner in praise of Coors policies.
We found that disgusting.
What's disgusting?
The award dinner by LULAC to Coors.
Why?
Here, they're awarding a corporate bully.
Why are they getting all these awards that you acknowledge they're getting?
Money, Mike. A lot of money. They contribute lots and lots of money.
And Sickler says the workers at Coors are, as a whole, unhappy, demoralized.
There's no pride left in that plant anymore. People are walking around without pride.
But if there is no pride, if conditions are so oppressive, there is precious little evidence of it inside Coors. We wanted to know what Coors employees thought of all the accusations being leveled against their employers. Coors invited its employees to meet with us during their lunch hour. And we were surprised to find that hundreds of them were waiting to tell us a different story from the one that we'd been hearing. We heard them at random on the issue of minorities.
As a former union member and brewery employee and Hispanic, in fact, some of the things that I've read, I found out through the newspaper that they weren't going to hire me, you know, or my people.
How long you been here?
I've been here 18 years. I'm a supervisor. In fact, Coors was hiring Hispanics before it was fashionable.
I reminded this worker of the allegations that Hispanics are just being bought off by Coors.
Well, they bought me with a good job, good benefits, security for me and my family. If that's buying, I'll take it.
And what about the issue of women?
I started here at the Adolph Coors Company 23 years ago. I have never felt that Coors was anti-female, anti-woman.
I can't imagine anything being farther from the truth, that Coors is against people. They're pro-people, 100%.
What kind of a hard hat job do you have?
I'm a construction supervisor.
Really?
Yes.
But what about those other charges? What about lie detectors? Coors does use a polygraph to screen prospective employees. They started in 1963 as a security precaution, they say. After Adolf Coors III, Bill and Joe's brother was kidnapped and murdered. But what about those alleged questions about sexuality? Were such questions asked?
I don't know. There is a time when we didn't know what questions were asked. So I can't tell you, Mike, that those questions were not asked.
Those questions have never been asked, Mike. That's just not true.
Gaylord Hawley runs Fact Finders, the company that used to administer polygraph tests for Coors. They no longer work for Coors, but Hawley denies that such questions were ever asked.
There was no reason to ever ask any of those questions. Those questions have not been asked, people.
You swear it?
Yes.
Despite what Hawley says, a few former workers have alleged they were asked some personal questions when they were given lie detector tests about 15 years ago. But the Coors workers we talked to had a different story.
How many of you people had to take pre-employment lie detector tests? How many of you were asked questions about your sexual activities, preferences, or whatever?
Finally, we wanted to know about the policy of search and seizure alleged to be routine at Coors.
Who was subjected to forced search seizure?
Mr. Jerry Barella.
This is Jerry Barella. He worked at Coors back in 1975 until Coors security people accused him of using marijuana and demanded to search his pickup truck.
They searched it. They looked under the hood, under the wheel, under the fenders and everything. And the last place they looked was the ashtray. And that's where they found the end of the cigarette. It's about as big as a filter on a cigarette. That's about how big it was.
And it was a marijuana cigarette.
They asked me, do you know what that is? And I said, not really, but I can probably guess.
Jerry Barella was fired despite his denial that the marijuana was his. But the question is, are such incidents routine?
We don't do this very often. I think in the past 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, we have had 4 instances of employees who have had their lockers searched or their lunch boxes searched. He just happened to be one of them.
Jerry Barella himself claims such a search was rare. And ironically, he supports the need for such a policy.
You know, the way I look at things is if they're good enough to give you a paycheck every 2 weeks, you better do what they say. And they pay very decent. Coors is known to be one of the best places to work in Denver, and that's no kidding. And I know it. They have good benefits. They have everything.
What is Jerry Barella talking about? Why is it that so many workers have such praise for Coors? Part of the answer may be the fact that Coors has established itself as one of the highest paying employers in Colorado. The average annual salary of a brewery worker here is about $25,000. Coors has recreational centers for its employees and their families in an expansive program of health and medical benefits. And Coors subsidizes continuing education for many of its employees. In view of all this apparent good treatment, I asked David Sickler again for evidence that Coors routinely subjects its workers to regressive tactics.
Give me an example over the last 5 years of illegal search and seizure, if you want to call it.
In the last 5 years?
Yeah.
I have no examples.
You have no examples? Okay.
No.
And he still maintains the AFL-CIO objects to Coors' use of a lie detector.
As long as Coors continues to use that lie detector, we're convinced it has the potential of abuse, whether it's being abused or it's not being abused. The point is they still have the right to give the lie detector test. They still impose it on people.
So do all kinds of companies, and you're not boycotting them.
No, we don't. And many of those companies have union contracts, Mike.
That really is the nub of the issue.
That's right.
They got rid of the union.
That's right.
But I pointed out to Dave Sickler that there is that one union still left at Coors, the operating engineers. And I read him a letter written by the business manager of that union.
Coors recognized the dignity of its employees, including all local members. Coors does not force employees to take lie detector tests. Many articles have appeared throughout the U.S. which contain outright fabrications being presented as facts about the Adolf Coors Company. And now this is one of your brothers.
He's not brother of mine. He's a liar. He's a damn liar.
So the battle at Coors continues. The AFL-CIO keeps up its national boycott, and that spells continuing trouble for Coors. But in the meantime, applications for employment there are put at several thousand a year. Coors still maintains its pre-employment polygraph. It still forbids drugs on company property. And Joe and Bill Coors remain steadfast in their conviction that they are being maligned by organized labor.
I doubt, maybe I'm wrong, but I doubt that you'd be sitting down with me and say, ask any question, and Make them as tough as you want to, if it weren't for the fact that you people are hurting.
Certainly.
We want the truth of the Coors story known to the American public.
After that report was broadcast, we received many angry letters from union members around the country complaining that 60 Minutes hadn't fully examined the history of labor relations at Coors. Murray Seeger of the AFL-CIO in Washington, D.C. said in a letter to 60 Minutes, the AFL will continue to support the Coors boycott until the management of that company negotiates a fair and equitable contract that recognizes the human rights of its workers. But the AFL-CIO acknowledges that there is currently no official effort underway to organize any of Coors' workers. Finally, in our report, some serious allegations were made by David Sickler of the AFL-CIO. First, that LULAC, that Latin American organization, supported Coors only because it was receiving money from them. To that allegation, Hector Godinez, who heads the LULAC Foundation, told us, "We ask and solicit help from many corporations. Coors has not given any more than any of those companies. LULAC," he said emphatically, "is not purchased by anyone." In answer to the charge that the business manager of the operating engineers is lying about what is really happening at Coors, an official of that union told us, "There is no evidence in my 15 years as business manager of the operating engineers that any of my union members was ever treated in the manner alleged by the AFL-CIO to be taking place at Coors."